There are three main categories of d20 rolls you will make while playing D&D. Ability checks, saving throws, and attack rolls. The basic rule for all of these rolls is you roll the d20, add the appropriate modifiers and any bonuses or penalties, and then the DM will compare that total to a predetermined number called the DC. Each type of roll serves a different function. We'll be going over what those are, and we'll finally fill in our skill bonuses, and I'll tell you how to apply them in the game. Anyway, enough of me using my skills of rambling. Let's talk about ability checks and saving throws. An ability check is the use of a character's non-combat skills. When a player describes a character's actions, those actions can be tied to any one ability score, as determined by the DM. Some examples of these would be attempting to break down a door, that would be a strength check, or accurately appraising the value of a piece of art, that would be an intelligence check. To roll an ability check, roll the d20 and add the modifier of the ability associated with the ability check. The DM might tell you that you are proficient in the act being performed, and so get to add your +2 proficiency bonus, which we have written on our character sheet. An example of using ability checks in a more specific way is when using tools, such as carpenter's tools, disguise kits, and thieves' tools. Tools are still based on context, so how you use them will determine which ability modifier you get to add to your d20 roll. But no matter how you use the tools, if they are listed in your other proficiencies and languages, you will always be considered proficient with them. However, if you're performing a physical task, you will need to have the tools listed amongst your equipment. I'm going to use some thieves' tools as an example. If you're going to pick a lock, your DM will likely tell you to make a dexterity check using your thieves' tools, because this is a task that requires delicate handwork. You will also need to possess thieves' tools in order to perform this task. On the other hand, if you're trying to recall information about how locks work, your DM could tell you to make an intelligence check associated with thieves' tools. In this situation, you don't need to physically own thieves' tools. In both of those examples, if you were proficient with thieves' tools, you would get to add your proficiency bonus to those rolls. An even more specific and even more common use of ability checks is when using any of the 18 skills that are listed on the left side of your character sheet. Though they are a type of ability check, d20 rolls using skills are often called skill checks because of how common they are. Unlike tools, each skill is linked to one of your 6 ability scores, which is written after the skill in shorthand. The only skill we have associated with strength is athletics. For dexterity, we have the acrobatics, sleight of hand, and stealth skills. Tied to intelligence, we have the arcana, history, investigation, nature, and religion skills. With wisdom, we have animal handling, insight, medicine, perception, and survival. And the skills associated with charisma are deception, intimidation, performance, and persuasion. There are no skills that are linked to the Constitution ability score. Any character can use any of these skills. When using a skill, you roll the d20 and add the ability modifier associated with that skill to the roll. During the course of building your character, you had the opportunity to gain proficiency in some skills through your class, race, and background. If you have proficiency in a skill, that shows that your character has had training or at least focused on that skill in particular, which means that you get to add your proficiency bonus when using that skill. You should have all the skills you're proficient in marked by having filled in the circles to the left of them. Let's take the moment now to fill in the skill bonuses. To calculate your skill bonuses, look at the ability modifier associated with each skill and write that number on the line next to the skill. If the circle is filled in, increase that number by your proficiency bonus of +2. Repeat this process for all of your skills. Now when you roll the d20 to use these skills within the game, you won't need to do this calculation again, because you can just look at your skill bonuses. So now we know what skills are and have our skill bonuses calculated, but how do we use them? After the Dungeon Master presents the characters with a situation, this is when a player has a chance to act, based on the information they've received. An example using the character we've made, there is a bouncer blocking access into the pub where Mickey Tumble Run needs to go for a quest. What will he do? This would be a good opportunity to use a skill check. I won't be going into what each skill does in this series, though a lot of them can be taken at face value. For more specifics on each skill, see Using Each Ability on pages 175 to 179 of the Player's Handbook, or pages 62 to 65 of the Basic Rules. So Mickey is trying to get past the bouncer without resorting to violence. A couple of ideas come to mind. He could use the stealth skill to be sneaky and make his way in through another entrance unseen. Or he could use the deception skill and lie to the bouncer and claim that he is the owner of the pub. So we've got some strategic ideas, but let's look at Mickey's skill bonuses for those two skills. In order to have the greatest chance of success, we ideally want to choose a skill with a higher skill bonus. So Mickey's stealth skill bonus is -1. That's because stealth is linked to dexterity, and Mickey's dexterity score is 8, which means the modifier is -1. He also doesn't have proficiency in the stealth skill, so he doesn't get to add the proficiency bonus of +2. However, Mickey's deception skill bonus is +5. Deception is linked to charisma, and Mickey's charisma score is 16, with a modifier of +3. To top it off, Mickey does have proficiency in the deception skill, so we get to add the +2 proficiency bonus this time. Based on that, we know that Mickey will have a better chance to succeed if he uses deception. Now that we have a plan, we can make use of our skill. However, D&D isn't a board game. I wouldn't say to my DM, I want to use the deception skill. Instead, describe to the table what your character is doing. Take part in writing the story of the moment. This is a great way to practice and improve your role-playing skills. In the end, the DM will be the one to tell you which skill check to make, based on how you describe things, so make sure your character's actions reflect the skill you're aiming to use. In this case, I would tell the DM, Mickey is going to lie to the bouncer, angrily claiming that he is the owner of the pub. The DM in response might say, make a charisma deception check. I would then roll my d20 and then add my deception skill bonus of +5 to the roll. I would add the numbers together, and I now have my total, and the DM would tell me if I succeeded or failed based on the difficulty challenge they have set. But sometimes a skill check isn't compared to a DC set by the Dungeon Master. Rather, it's set by another character's own skill check. In a situation where two characters are trying to prevail over the other, or they're both trying to do the same task but only one can succeed, the DM may call for a skill contest. In a skill contest, you follow the usual rules for making a skill check. The DM will tell you what skill you can use based on what you're trying to do. Instead of comparing to a difficulty check, however, the two characters compare their rolls against each other, and whoever has the higher result succeeds at the task they're performing. So Mickey attempts to lie to the bouncer using a charisma deception check in order to get into the pub. The DM decides that this scenario calls for a skill contest, as the bouncer doesn't want Mickey to get into the pub. And so the DM rolls a wisdom insight check on behalf of the bouncer. This is a skill that is used to sense the motivations of others. If Mickey's deception check is higher than the bouncer's insight check, the DM may describe that the bouncer hurriedly steps aside and apologizes for the inconvenience, and allows Mickey into the pub. If the bouncer's insight check is higher, however, the DM could describe that the bouncer laughs at the blatant lie. The bouncer clearly knows who the owner is and tells Mickey to leave immediately. Mickey would now have to find another way into the pub. In the result of a tie, the situation remains the same as it had been before the contest. Depending on the situation, this might mean that one character wins by default, or nothing happens. In our example, it would likely mean that the bouncer still won't let Mickey inside, but he might be doubting himself. This could lead to further situations, like Mickey attempting to threaten firing the bouncer to intimidate him, or the bouncer might ask someone inside the pub to come out and verify Mickey's identity. The next type of check we'll talk about is called a passive check. A passive check is just a number that represents a character's average use of each skill, without the pressure to perform. This involves no die roll on the player's part, and is just calculated as 10 plus skill bonus. The one most commonly used by players is the passive perception check. It acts as a DC against enemies in hiding. This is reflective of your character's neutral awareness. You may not be actively looking for danger, but if you're naturally more perceptive than most people, you might notice something without putting in the effort. A creature would have to roll a stealth check higher than your passive perception in order to remain hidden. This might happen instead of a skill contest because the DM doesn't want to make players suspicious by asking for a sudden skill check, and so will reference the player's passive checks of the necessary skills. Just below the skills section on the left side of your character sheet, there is a spot that says passive perception. Add 10 to your perception skill bonus and enter that total there. Sometimes ability checks can't be performed alone, or it may be beneficial to have more characters attempting the same task. If a player attempts an ability check, someone else may choose to help them in the task. Instead of the second character doing the same role, the helper gives the first character advantage on their check. And to reiterate, having advantage means you get to roll the d20 twice and take the higher of the two rolls. In order to help someone in this manner, you have to meet two requirements. Firstly, the helper must be capable of completing the same task on their own. For example, if someone is building a house using their proficiency with carpenter's tools, the person helping would also need to have proficiency with carpenter's tools. The second requirement is having another person needs to actually be helpful. If the task is threading a needle, it's not really helpful to have a second person, but that might be up to the DM's discretion. So we've got players helping other players, but let's get the whole party involved. If the whole party is attempting the same task all together, this is called a group check. The benefit of this kind of check is that those who are skilled at the task help cover those who aren't. Group checks are often used in group exploration, such as climbing up a mountain or sneaking through a forest. If the DM calls for a group check, each individual in the party must roll whatever ability or skill check is being called for. If at least half of the party rolls high enough, the whole group succeeds. Less than half results in a group failure. That was a lot about ability checks, but we're finally ready to move on to the second type of d20 roll, saving throws, also known as saves. A saving throw is a d20 roll you make when your character is resisting an effect or potential damage originating from an external source, such as a trap, poison, or spell. On the character sheet, the section for saving throws is located directly above the skills section. There are only 6 types of saving throws, each linked to a different ability score. Your character's class determines your proficiency in 2 predetermined saving throws, and we've already filled these in when we went over our class. When your DM tells you to roll a d20 for a saving throw, the numbers listed here are your saving throw bonuses, and they work like your skill bonuses. You roll the d20, and add the appropriate bonus. Based on your total result, your DM will let you know if you succeed or fail the saving throw. So I'll give you some examples of how each saving throw is typically used. A strength saving throw is used when you need to hold your ground or avoid being pushed around. A dexterity saving throw is likely going to be used to dodge out of the way of something or maintain your balance. A constitution saving throw is using your physical conditioning, usually fighting off toxins or fatigue. An intelligence saving throw is about resisting assaults on your mind, using your intellect. A wisdom saving throw is a reflection of the strength of your willpower. A charisma saving throw is the force of your personality. It repels attempts at possession or dimensional banishment. Ability checks and saving throws begin to give us as players the tools we need to understand how we're going to be playing the game. However, we left out the third type of d20 roll in this episode, the attack roll. We'll be going over that and more in the next episode when we jump into combat. In the meantime, be kind and play dicely.